Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a concept that is, well, deeply fascinating, but honestly incredibly slippery. We're talking about nihilism. On the surface, it seems like literally the simplest philosophy in the world. But as we dig into our sources today, we're going to discover how it acts like this psychological chameleon, and ultimately, how it completely trips over its own shoelaces. So, let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this right at the core existential tension. I mean, if we entertain the idea for a second that there is no grand cosmic plan, no divine scorecard, and literally nothing matters in the grand scheme of the universe, why even bother getting out of bed, right? Why go to work? Why be kind? Why do anything at all? This is the fundamental, agonizing question that our source material wrestles with. It's that immediate brick wall you hit when you first encounter nihilistic thought, and it forces us to look really closely at what it actually means to exist without a pre-written script. So, to really understand this, we need to establish the baseline. At its core, nihilism is simply the belief that nothing has intrinsic meaning, and the universe, it just doesn't care, period. You strip away the idea of cosmic purpose, you strip away grand destinies, you toss out all the divine rule books, and what are you left with? Basically, a completely clean slate. The core premise is undeniably straightforward. It's an intellectual ground zero. But as our source points out, the real complexity here is what human beings actually do with that clean slate once they wiped it clean.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that when people realize the universe has no inherent meaning, they usually diverge down one of two very different paths. On one side, you've got the grim trap. This is passive nihilism. For a lot of people, this realization leads straight into apathy, paralysis, and just deep existential dread. It basically becomes the ultimate excuse to give up. But on the flip side, we have the cosmic hall pass. For some, this exact same realization is deeply liberating. Think about it. If the universe didn't write a script for you, your embarrassing moments don't matter. Your failures aren't recorded on some cosmic ledger. And you are handed this beautifully blank canvas to invent your own purpose entirely from scratch. It's the exact same philosophy, right? But it creates two radically different human experiences. And this stark contrast leads us directly into what we can call the philosophical pivot. Famous existentialist thinkers, guys like Nietzsche and Sartre, they looked at nihilism and realized, hey, this isn't the end of the story. It's merely the starting line. It's definitely not the finish line where you just, collapse in despair. Actually, Nietzsche warned that passive nihilism, that grim trap of apathy, would completely ruin humanity. He argued passionately that we have to step up. If the universe isn't going to provide values for us, well, we have the immense responsibility and opportunity to become the creators of our own values. It's essentially a massive call to action wrapped inside a void.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because we need to see what happens when we take this to its absolute extreme. If you deny everything, intrinsic meaning, truth, morals, reality, you end up basically pulling the floor right out from under your own feet. And it begs a pretty terrifying question. When you deny everything, where does the mind actually stand? Like, what happens to human consciousness when it successfully strips away every single anchor it usually holds on to?
Well, our source breaks down four pretty fascinating ways the mind tries to cope with this radical denial. First, we have standing in the void. This is where the mind just becomes an isolated island, kind of just observing itself. Second, as an instrument. Here, you stop seeking meaning entirely and just become biological hardware reacting to the world around you. Third is on the abyss. This ties back to Nietzsche's warning that running an engine on zero meaning eventually just leads to total numbness. And finally, we hit the plot twist, standing as the creator. So the crucial point is this massive paradox right here. To deny everything is still a choice. This is the ultimate climax of radical nihilism, and honestly, it's the paradox that brings the whole thing crashing down. Think about it. The very moment your mind says nothing is real or meaningful, it has just asserted a stance. It has generated a worldview. It's created a belief. You literally cannot stand completely outside of reality while actively thinking about it. So the mind accidentally creates a firm position in the very act of trying to erase all positions. The philosophy completely defeats itself. To make sense of this paradox, our source introduces this highly relatable, almost cozy metaphor that brings all this high-level philosophy right back down to earth. Imagine the mind going through radical denial as basically becoming a ghost in its own house. The mind just floats around its daily existence, completely present yet fundamentally disconnected from the weight of it all. It's a strange, slightly eerie image, I know, but it perfectly captures the state of someone who has intellectually decided that reality is void of meaning, yet they still absolutely exist within that reality. Let's just lean into the quiet absurdity of this image for a second. The ghost is in its house, observing its own thoughts, floating around, and making tea. It's bumping into the furniture of daily life. Because, hey, even the most radical nihilist still gets thirsty, right? They still stub their toes. They still have to engage with the incredibly mundane, physical reality of existence. The mind might claim the house doesn't exist, but that ghost still has to live in it, boil the water, and steep the tea leaves. And this brilliantly illustrates the hilarious ultimate absurdity of extreme nihilism. You can deny the concept of purpose all day long. You can float around making your tea, whispering to yourself, none of this room actually exists, nothing really matters. But at the end of the day, you still have to figure out what you're going to do with your Tuesday afternoon. You still have to choose exactly how to spend your time. The practical, everyday demands of living completely overwrite the intellectual denial of life's meaning. Which brings us to you and how you navigate your own reality. When you look at this ghost in its own house perspective, how does this strike you? Is it a sense of lighthearted detachment, like a cosmic hall pass that just frees you from everyday drama and anxiety? Or does constantly denying the meaning of the furniture you keep bumping into feel like an exhausting, impossible paradox? It's a pretty provocative thought to leave you with as you go about your own Tuesday afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll see you next time.